The King in Yellow, Casilda's song from Act 1, Scene 2 of the play The King in Yellow. Along the shore, the cloud waves break. The twin suns sink behind the lake. The shadows lengthen in Carcosa. Strange is the night where black stars rise and strange moons circle through the skies. But stranger still is lost Carcosa. Songs that the Hyades shall sing, where flap the tatters of the king, must die unheard in dim Carcosa. Song of my soul, my voice is dead. Die thou, unsung, as tears unshed, shall dry and die in lost Carcosa. Carcosa, the lost city from The King in Yellow. A two-act play that drove anyone who read it, second act, either insane or to their doom. From the story, The Repairer of Reputations. If I had not caught a glimpse of the opening words in the second act, I should never have finished it, but as I stooped to pick up, my eyes became riveted to the open page, and with a cry of terror, or perhaps it was of joy so poignant that I suffered it in every nerve, I snatched the thing from the heart and crept, shaking, to my bedroom, where I read it and reread it and wept and laughed and trembled with a horror which at times assails me yet. This is the thing that troubles me, for I cannot forget Carcosa, where black stars hang in the heavens, where the shadows of men's thoughts lengthen in the afternoon, when the twin suns sink into the lake of Hali, and my mind will bear forever the memory of the palette mask. The Prophet's Paradise by Robert Chambers. The studio, he smiled, saying, "Seek her throughout the world." I said, "Why tell me of the world? My world is here, between these walls and the sheets of glass above, here among gilded flagons and dull jeweled arms, tarnished frames and canvases, black chests and high-backed chairs, quaintly carved and stained in blue and gold. For whom do you wait?" he said, and I answered, "When she comes, I shall know her." On my heart, a tongue of flame whispered secrets to the whitening ashes. In the street below, I heard footsteps, a voice, and a song. "For whom do you wait?" he said, and I answered, "I shall know her." Footsteps, a voice, and a song in the street below, and I knew the song, but neither the steps nor the voice. "Fool," he cried, "the song is the same. The voice and steps have but changed with years." On the heart, a tongue of flame whispered above the whitening ashes, "Wait no more, they've passed. The steps and the voice in the street below." Then he smiled, saying, "For whom do you wait? Seek her throughout the world." I answered, "My world is here, between these walls and the sheet of glass above, here among gilded flagons and jeweled arms, tarnished frames and canvases, black chests and high-backed chairs, quaintly carved and stained in blue and gold." The Phantom. The phantom of the past would go no further. "If it is true," she sighed, "that you find me in a friend, let us turn back together. You will forget here under the summer sky." I held her close, pleading, caressing. I seized her, white with anger, but she resisted. "If it is true," she sighed, "that you find me in a friend, let us turn back together. The phantom of the past would go no further." Sacrifice. I went into a field of flowers whose petals are whiter than snow, and whose hearts are pure gold. Far afield, a woman cried, "I have killed him I loved," and from a jar she poured blood upon the flowers, whose petals are whiter than snow, and whose hearts are pure gold. Far afield I followed, and on the jar I read 1,000 names, while from within the fresh blood bubbles to the brim. I have killed him I loved, she cried. The world's a tryst, now let it drink. She passed. In far field, I watched her pouring blood upon the flowers, whose petals are whiter than snow, and whose hearts are pure gold. Destiny. I came to the bridge which few may pass. Pass, cried the keeper, but I laughed, saying, there is time. And he smiled and shut the gates. To the bridge which few may pass came young and old. All were refused. Idly I stood and counted them until, wearied of their noise and lamentations, I came again to the bridge which few may pass. Those in the throng about the gate shrieked, he comes too late, but I laughed, saying, there is time. Pass, cried the keeper as I entered, then smiled and shut the gates. The throng. There, where the throng was thickest in the street, I stood with Piero. All eyes were turned on me. What are they laughing at? I asked, but he grinned, dusting the chalk from my black cloak. I cannot see. It must be something droll, perhaps an honest thief. All eyes were turned on me. He has robbed you of your purse, they laughed. My purse, I cried. Piero, help. It is a thief. They laughed. He has robbed you of your purse. Then Truth stepped out, holding a mirror. If he is an honest thief, cried Truth, Piero shall find him with this mirror. But he only grinned, dusting the chalk from my black cloak. You see, he said, Truth is an honest thief. She brings you back your mirror. All eyes were turned on me. Arrest Truth, I cried, forgetting it was not a mirror, but a purse I lost. Standing with Piero, there, where the throng was thickest in the street. The jester. Was she fair? I asked, but he only chuckled, listening to the bells jingling on his cap. Stabbed, he tittered. Think long of the journey, the days of peril, the dreadful nights. Think how he wandered, for her sake, year after year, through hostile lands. Yearning for kith and kin, yearning for her. Stabbed, he tittered, listening to the bells jingling on his cap. Was she fair? I asked, but he only snarled, muttering to the bells jingling on his cap. She kissed him as the gate, he tittered. But in the hall, his brother's welcome touched his heart. Was she fair? I asked. Stabbed, she chuckled. Think of the long journey, the days of peril, the dreadful nights. Think how he wandered for her sake, year after year, through hostile lands, yearning for kith and kin, yearning for her. She kissed him at the gate. But in the hall, his brother's welcome touched his heart. Was she fair? I asked, but he only snarled, listening to the bells jingling on his cap. The green room. The clown turned his powdered face to the mirror. If to be fair is to be beautiful, he said, who can compare with me in my white mask? Who can compare with him in his white mask? I asked of Death beside me. Who can compare with me, said Death, for I am paler still. You are very beautiful, sighed the clown, turning his powdered face from the mirror. And finally, the love test. If it is true that you love, said Love, then wait no longer. Give her these jewels which would dishonor her, and so dishonor you and loving ones dishonored. If it is true that you loved, said Love, then wait no longer. I took the jewels and went to her, but she trod upon them, sobbing. Teach me to wait, I love you. Then wait if it is true, said Love. Not upon us, O king, not upon us.
The August heat. I have had, well, I believe to be the most remarkable day in my life. And while the events of I'm sorry guys, I can't read this story. I gotta tell you something. I don't know how many of you know, but sometime last January I moved out of London, and I moved into a semi-detached house on the outskirts of Hatfield. I'm telling you all this not to bore you, but to add some necessary detail. The house is in a close, a cul-de-sac, if you will, and it opens onto a green, on the edge of which is a nature reserve. From our front window, you see the green, a tree, children during the daytime. It's cheerful, wonderful. But as the night walks, the edge of the forest slowly swallows this pastoral site and just leaves in its place darkness. And you know, I'm not one who is easily scared. It's my job with horror and all its kind. But I have to admit to you, I found it uneasy walking through that forest at night. Imagine this, if you will. A path with no public lighting, half a mile, running straight through the forest, surrounded by nothing but trees and the night sounds that you'd expect. And you know, I've done it a few times, of course, and I still find myself speeding up a bit at night. And if we're being honest, often when I reach the green where the lights of the houses welcome me, I find myself turning, looking back to see if there's anything standing in the darkness. I mean, none of this would matter had I not made a foolish mistake. And the reason I'm so jittery right now, and instead of reading you the ghost story I intended for Christmas, I'm boring you with this rambling of a man under stress from the pandemic and the world at large. And I hope all of you listening, and Freddie especially, can forgive this intrusion to our broadcast from the Red Hill. It was around October this year that I started having nightmares. And it's implausible. 2020 has been tough on all of us. My subconscious is full of subjects to explore. There's employment, there's health, there's our future. And, you know, as we wound down one cycle of a year, of course, I'm trying to cope with all that had happened. And I found myself having a nightmare night after night, jolted awake in the middle of the night. And it would take me 30 minutes before I could fall back asleep again. And, you know, sometimes I couldn't fall back asleep. So I'd get up and I'd walk over to the window and I'd peer through the closed curtains and I'd look at the green and the edge of the forest in complete darkness, serene, eerie. And, you know, what was really weird was I never expect to see people. We were talking about 3 a.m., but I never saw animals either. And it seemed as if they themselves were avoiding the forest. November, things took a turn. My nightmares had continued all the way through October. But then all the variety of subjects that had haunted me dropped away, and they became one nightmare, one single worrying nightmare that came every night, filling me dread, and I was jolted awake, out of breath, drenched in sweat, drenched in fear. And the nightmare was this. I would be walking through the forest path to the green where our house stood, and it would be in complete darkness, as usual. And as I walked up, my steps speeding up, I would become aware of a figure behind me. I could not see the figure, nor did the figure do anything. But I knew for a fact the figure stood there. And only when I crossed into the open of the green would I turn back, and I would see the shadow standing there, just watching. And as soon as I saw it clear as can be, in the dead darkness of the night, I would wake up. Fear, sweat, a dread that I find even hard to describe. Now, Freddie and I have talked about shadow beings many times in pubs. 2 years ago, when we did our ghost story, I wrote about them, but they were a trope to me. I didn't really believe in them. But this shadow figure was real. It's hard for me to describe this figure. It's about 6 foot tall, in a coat, face obscured by the very forest. It's not moving. It stands very still. And I know, even though I can't tell, it's looking straight at me. And night after night, the same nightmare. 10 days of this misery, and I thought, I have to do something. I have to do something. So I started reading about nightmares. And of course, there isn't much you can do, but it says that you can change a dream. Bit by bit, step by step. So I tried. Over the course of another 10 days, I started trying to change small things. A step here instead of here. A move there instead of there. And slowly, I became more aware and more in control, and the dream did not change. I thought, if I can move up to this figure, if I can go and I confront him, I can break the loop that I'm in. Now, looking back, I wish I'd never attempted it. I still remember the night clearly, a cold mid-November. And I drank, for courage, a fair amount, and so fell asleep easily. And within minutes, I was on the same familiar forest path. And slowly, the sensation of being watched. And suddenly, I was on the green, and I looked back, and the figure was standing there, watching me. And this time, confidently, I turned and ran straight at the figure, who It felt for a moment stirred, but before it could react, I was upon it. And finally, I saw its face. It was me. I woke up even worse than before, and beyond the dread, beyond the fear and the horror and the sense of sickness, I knew I'd done something wrong. I knew it before I got out of bed. I knew it before I walked to the curtains. And I knew it before I looked outside. The figure now stood at the edge of the forest. No longer a dream. I had brought it back with me. Since then, the nightmares have stopped. I know, you think that's a good thing. But I know what I'd done was monstrous. And by giving it life, I had haunted myself forever. Because when I finally saw that shadow's face, I knew exactly what it wanted. It wanted my life. Now, whenever I look out the window late at night, the figure approaches closer. Every night, inch by inch, it comes, and I know exactly what it wants. And I know what it will get once it gets here. And there's nothing I can do to change that. But that's not all. Tonight, just before this broadcast, I looked out one last time. One last doubt. It stood at the end of our pathway. Dear God,